Chapter 1: The Fallen Genius. Third Stage Dou Qi. Watching the 5 large words imprinted on the magic testing monument that were so bright to the point of being eye-piercing, the young man didn't display any expressions. The corners of his mouth were lifted into a self-ridiculing smile. He tightly clenched his hands into fists, and due to the strength that he used, his slightly sharp nails bit into his palm, bringing waves of pain. Xiao Yan, Dou Qi, third stage. Rank low. Next to the magic testing monument was a middle-aged man who, after looking at the information displayed, announced the results in an indifferent voice. The moment the words from the middle-aged man left his mouth, a ridiculing commotion ran through the packed field. Third stage? Ha ha, I told you this genius would once again stay where he was. Ugh, this cripple really has disgraced the clan. If his father wasn't the clan leader, we would have banished this kind of crippled out of the clan and let him live by himself. He definitely wouldn't have the chance to eat and sleep in the clan. Wow! How could the genius that was renowned in the Wutan city fall to this state today? Who knows? Maybe he did something unforgivable and made the gods angry at him. Words of pity and ridicule were emitted from the surrounding and fell into the young man who was standing at the same place like a wood stump. The words were like sharp stakes driven into his heart, making the young man's breathing a little hurried. The young man raised his head and showed his delicate and slightly immature face. His dark eyes lifelessly fell upon his peers who were ridiculing him, and the self-ridiculing smile at the corner of his mouth seemed to have become more bitter. Were these people always so harsh? Maybe it's because they showed their most humble smile before me 3 years ago, thus, they want to take it back now. With a bitter smile, Xiao Yan turned around. His quietly went to the last row of the group. His lonesome figure seemed to be unable to fit in with the rest of his surroundings. Next, Xiao Mei! With the announcer's voice, a young girl quickly ran out from within the group of people. As soon as the young girl appeared, the chatter nearby lowered as heated gazes zoomed onto her face. The young girl was only around 14 and couldn't be considered to be an extreme beauty. However, her face, which was still a hint of childishness, showed a faint enchantment. Innocence and enchanting beauty, this contradicting combination made her the focus of the crowd. The young girl quickly went up and her small hand practically touched the black magic testing monument. Then, she slowly closed her eyes. A moment after the girl closed her eyes, the jet-black magic testing monument lighted up. Dou Qi, 7th stage. Xiao Mei, Dou Qi, 7th stage. Rank high. Ha! Hearing the score called out by the announcer, the young girl's face showed a prideful smile. TSK, 7th stage Dou Qi, incredible. With this speed, she'll be a true doja in at most 3 years. Indeed, worth of the clan's top talent. Hearing the sounds of envy from the crowd, the young girl's smile became deeper. Vanity was a temptation that many girls couldn't resist from. 3. Talking with her sister friends, Xiao Mei's gaze shot through the surrounding crowd and stopped on a lonely figure outside of the crowd. After furrowing her brows and thinking for a while, Xiao Mei decided against walking over. The two were not on the same level anymore. With the performance of Xiao Yan in the past few years, after he undergoes the adulthood ceremony, he would only be at most a middle to lower rank member within the clan. On the other hand, the talented her would be a focus point for resources from the clan. It could be said that her future couldn't be measured. Ugh! Sighing out of the blue, Xiao Mei suddenly thought of the young man 3 years ago that was excluded a prideful aura. Starting to train at the age of 4, reaching the 9th stage of Dou Qi at the age of 10, 10th stage at 11 where he was able to condense his Dou Qi into a vortex successful, becoming the youngest doge that the Xiao clan had seen 100 years. The young before had unlimited potential and captured countless young girls. hearts, including Xiao Mei. However, the path of a genius meets its bends. 3 years ago, this young man who had reached the peak of his fame suddenly had the cruelest blow of his life. Not only was his Dou Qi vortex, that he spent over 10 years cultivating, disappearing within one night, as time went on, the Dou Qi within his body also became strangely less and less. The direct impact of his Dou Qi disappearing was that his strength continuously decreased. Falling the podium of genius to becoming less than a normal person in one night, this blow made the young man lose his vigor. The fame of being a genius also was slowly replaced with disdain and ridicule. The higher one stood, the harsher one fell. The fall this time, perhaps Xiao Yan would never be able to recover from it. Next, Xiao Suner! Amidst the noisy crowd, the announcer's voice once again sounded. As this name was called, the crowd suddenly became quiet. All of their gazes turned. Everyone's gaze focused on a young girl wearing a purple dress. She was quiet standing, and the calm expression on her young face didn't change at all with the gazes of everyone. The young girl's calm and indifferent demeanor was like a lotus blossoming. With such a young age, she had already had such an aura around her. It was hard to imagine how beautiful she would be in the future. Whether by demeanor or beauty, this purple-dressed young girl was prettier than the earlier Xiao Mei by quite a bit. It was natural that everyone would act in such a manner. Taking small and graceful stuff, the young girl named Xiao Suner moved to before the magic testing monument. Her small hand reached out and her purple sleeve mixed with black and gold threads fell, revealing a snow-white wrist. She then lightly touched the monument. After a slight silence, an eye-piercing light shone from the monument. Dou Qi, 9th stage! Rank high! Watching the words on the monument, the whole field fell silent. She's at the 9th stage, that's terrifying! The top expert of the younger generation of the Xiao clan will definitely be Miss Suners. After the silence, the young men around all swallowed their saliva as their eyes were full of respect. Dou Qi was a stage that every doja had to pass. The early Dou Qis ranked from the 1st stage to the 10th stage, and once one reached the 10th stage of Dou Qi, they could condense their Dou Qi into a vortex and become a respected doja. Within the crowd, Xiao Mei furrowed her brow as she looked at the purple-dressed girl before the monument. A trace of envy flashed across her face. Looking at the information on the monument, the middle-aged announcer finally showed a rare smile. He respectfully said to the young girl, Miss Suner, in half a year, you will be able to condense your Dou Qi vortex, and if you succeed, you would become a doja at the age of 14. Becoming the second youngest to do so within the past 100 years in the Xiao clan. Yes, she would be second. The first would be Xiao Yan, who no longer had the title of genius. Thank you. The young girl slightly nodded and her face didn't show any joy despite his praise. She quietly turned around and under everyone's gaze, she walked to the depressed young man at the very end. Brother Xiao Yan. When she passed the young man, the young girl paused her steps and bowed respectfully at Xiao Yan. Her pretty face showed a smile that made the girls around her feel jealousy. Do I still have the qualifications to be called such now? Looking at the clan's new most radiant pearl, Xiao Yan bitterly spoke. She was one of the few people who remained respectful towards him after his fall from grace. Brother Xiao Yan, you once said to Sun Er that one must be able to let go of things in order to take on responsibilities. Those that can take on and let go with ease are truly free. Xiao Suner said with a light smile. Her voice, while young, warmed people's hearts. Ha, a free person. I can say that. Look at me now, does this look like a free person? In addition, this world wasn't mine to begin with. Xiao Yan said, dispiritedly with a self-deprecating smile. Faced with Xiao Yan's lack of vigor, Xiao Suner's thick brows slightly furrowed. She seriously said, Brother Xiao Yan, although I have no idea what happened to you, however, I believe that you will once again stand. You will take back your former glory and respect. Speaking to this point, the young girl paused as her face showed a quick flush. The brother Xiao Yan at that time was also extremely attractive. Ha! Faced with the young girl's frank words, the young man awkwardly laughed but didn't say any more. Young men were supposed to be arrogant and reckless. However, at this point, Xiao Yan didn't have the qualifications to do so. He silently turned around and walked out of the field. Standing at the same spot and watching the young man's back, which seemed to be separated from the rest of the world, Xiao Suner paused for a second before she chased after Xiao Yan and walked beside him under countless jealous. Chapter 2 Dou Qi Continent. The moon was like a silver plate among a sky full of stars. At the peak of a cliff, Xiao Yan was laying down on the grass field as he held a stalk of grass in his mouth. He nibbled at it, allowing the faint bitter taste to slowly spread in his mouth. Raising up his white hand, he put it before his eyes. His gaze fell through the gaps of his finger and focused in onto the large silver moon in the sky. AI. Thinking back to the test in the afternoon, Xiao Yan let out a light sigh. He lazily pulled back his hand and placed both hands below his head, creating a makeshift pillow. His gaze also became unfocused. 15 years, huh? Lowly muttering to himself, words that made no sense came out of the young man's mouth. In Xiao Yan's heart, there was a secret that only he knew. He wasn't someone from this world. Rather, Xiao Yan's soul didn't belong to this world. He came from a blue planet called Earth. As for how he got here, he had no explanation on the mysterious processes at work. However, after living for a while, he came to the late understanding that he had come into a new world. Oh, as his age grew, Xiao Yan started to become familiar with this new land. The continent he was on was called the Dou Qi continent, but it didn't have the various types of magic that were common in novels. Rather, Dou Qi was the only main show of this land. On this continent, the practice of Dou Qi had been perfected to the peak after the hard work of countless generations. In addition, as Dou Qi knowledge and influence expanded, it even got to the point to be common within normal citizens. This made Dou Qi and the daily lives of people inseparable. With this, the status of Dou Qi on this land was irreplaceable. Because of the extreme status of Dou Qi, from this main branch, countless new branches of Dou Qi training methods sprang up. Some of the new Dou Qi training method were naturally better than others. After much analysis and accounting, the Dou Qi continent split the Dou Qi training methods into 4 classes and 12 ranks. The classes were Tian, Di, Xian and Huang. The ranks within each class were beginner, medium and high. The rank of the Dou Qi training method, known as Qi method, also impacted one's future achievements. For example, someone who practiced a middle Xian Qi method would be stronger than someone who practiced a high Huang Qi method even if they were at the same level of Dou Qi. On the Dou Qi continent, there were 3 ways to determine the strength of one. First was the strength of the person. If one's strength is at a 1-star Dou Qi, even if he was practicing a Tian class rare Qi method, it would still be hard to defeat a Dou Qi. Second was the Qi method. If the strengths were the same, if the Qi method level was higher if one was higher than the other, then there were countless benefits when fighting. Finally, the last way was the Dou techniques. It was like what the name said, they were techniques to use Dou Qi. Dou techniques also had levels and overall, they were the same, using Tian, Di, Xian and Huang for levels. There were countless Dou techniques on the Dou Qi continent, but those that were made available to the public were usually around the Huang level. If one wanted to get a higher tier Dou technique, they needed to enter a sect or a Dou Qi school on the continent. Of course, there were those who by luck got an ancient Qi method from an ancestor that had its own compatible Dou techniques. These Dou techniques from Qi methods, when combined with the Qi method, would be quite a bit stronger than normal. These three conditions were the base of predicting one's strength. Overall, if one could own a Qi method that was of a decently high level, the benefits in the future would be a lot higher. However, high-level Qi methods were hard for a commoner to obtain. The Qi methods that were available to all were at most in the Huang level. Some of the larger clans or small sects had Xian-level Qi methods. For example, in the Xiao clan, the top Qi method, which only the clan head could practice, was Angry Lion Roar. This was a wind-attributed, Xian class middle-level Qi method. Above Xian was the D class. However, for Qi methods at that level, perhaps only first-rate factions or large empires would have those. As for the Tian class, it had been over a couple hundred since it had appeared. In theory, if a normal person wanted to get a high-tier Qi method, it was harder than ascending the heavens. The land of the Dou Qi continent was vast with thousands of races. At the north, there were the barbarians that had infinite strength and could merge with a beast's soul. At the south of the continent were genius high-level beast clans as well as the dark races that were known for its viciousness. Because of how vast the land was, there were many unknown and nameless people. At the end of their lives, they perhaps would leave their Qi method that they spent their whole life perfected, hidden somewhere. It would wait for some lucky person to take it, and in the Dou Qi continent, there was a saying of, "If one day you fall off a cliff and into a cave, don't be afraid. Walk 2 steps forward, maybe you would become an expert." These words were true. In the past 1,000 years, there were countless people that became experts because of these lucky encounters. The result of these stories made a lot of people wait beside cliffs and jump down them with the dream of finding a legendary Qi method. Of course, these people mostly came back with broken arms or legs. All in all, this was a continent full of miracles and miracles to discover. Of course, in order to practice a Qi method, one had to become a true doji. However, the Xiao Yan now was quite far from this goal. Pay! Spitting out the grass blade in his mouth, Xiao Yan jumped up. His face was full of emotion as he roared at the sky. "Screw you! Did you transport me over to become a cripple? Damn it!" In his previous life, Xiao Yan was a normal person among masses of people. Money and pretty women ran in 2 parallel with him, never crossing his path. However, when he came to the Dou Qi continent, Xiao Yan surprisingly found that his soul was stronger than normal due to having the experiences of 2 lives. It must be known that on the Dou Qi continent, one's soul was innate. It might increase with age, but there were no Qi methods that could train one's soul. Even if it was a Tian Qi method, it was still impossible. This was common knowledge of the Dou Qi continent. The strong soul caused Xiao Yan's talent in training and at the same time, gave him the title of a genius. When a normal person understood that he had the cards to become a famous person, without the right amount of caution, that person would lose himself. Obviously, Xiao Yan, who was just a normal person, didn't have this caution about him, so when he started training Dou Qi, he decided to go the path of the acclaimed genius rather than growing in peace. Oh, if nothing wrong happened, Xiao Yan might have grown older while bearing the title of genius. However, unfortunately, at the age of 11, the genius name was suddenly taken from him. And his genius became a cripple name that everyone could laugh at. After yelling a couple times, Xiao Yan's emotion calmed down. His face returned to his normal. At this point, no matter how mad he got, he couldn't return the Dou Qi vortex that he had trained hard for. After bitterly shaking his head, Xiao Yan felt a little frustrated. After all, he was not sure what happened to his body. His daily checks of his body didn't discover anything. His soul became stronger and stronger as he grew older, and the absorption rate of the Dou Qi was also stronger than his peak. These conditions showed that his talent hadn't weakened. However, the Dou Qi after entering his body would strangely disappear without incident. The strange condition made Xiao Yan quite sad. After tiredly sighing, Xiao Yan raised his hand. On his finger was a black ring. The style of the ring was quite ancient, made of some kind of unknown material. In addition, there were some vague lines on the ring. However, this was his mother's final gift to him before she died. From the age of 4, he had been wearing it. It had been over 10 years and Xiao Yan had a lingering attachment to this final item that she left. Xiao Yan gave a bitter smile. These few years have really let down Mother. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Yan suddenly turned his head and looked at the pitch-black forest behind him. Father, you here? Although Xiao Yan's Dou Qi was only at the 3rd stage, Xiao Yan's spiritual sense was much sharper than even a 5-star doja. Before, when he mentioned his mother, he felt a hint of movement in the forest. Ha ha, Yan, it's quite late. Why are you still up here? Inside the forest, after pausing for a second, a man's voice rang out. After branches shuffled, a middle-aged man jumped out. His face was with a smile as he stared at his son under the moonlight. The middle-aged man wore a luxurious gray clothing and emitted a faint pressure in his steps. The thick brows on his face also gave him a sense of dignity. He was the current head of the Xiao clan, the 5-star doja, Xiao Yan. Father, you also haven't rested either, right? Looking at the middle-aged man, the smile on Xiao Yan's face became deeper. Although Xiao Yan had his previous life's experience, his father had not given up on him even when he fell from being a genius. This was why Xiao Yan willingly called him father. Yan, are you still thinking about the test this afternoon? Walking up, Xiao Yan said. Ha, what is there to think about? It was within predictions. Xiao Yan seriously shook his head while his smile was quite stale. A3. Looking at Xiao Yan's still young face, Xiao Yan gave a sigh. After pausing for a second, he suddenly said, Yan, you are 15 years old, right? Yes, father. In another year, you will have your adulthood ceremony. Xiao Yan gave a bitter smile. Yes, father, 1 more year. Xiao Yan calmly responded as his hand tightened. He knew what the adulthood ceremony meant. Once he'd passed the adulthood ceremony, the him who had no training talent would not be given the opportunity to go within the Dou Qi hall to find a Qi method. Instead, he would be placed to a clan's business and working on normal matters for the clan. This was the rule of the clan, and even if his father was the clan head, it couldn't be changed. After all, if one didn't become a doja before 25, he wouldn't be recognized by the clan. Sorry, Yan, if 1 year later your Dou Qi doesn't get to the 7th stage, then I will have to send you to a business of the clan. After all, this clan's decisions aren't solely by me. The old fellows are always waiting on me making a mistake. Looking at the calm Xiao Yan, Xiao Yan said with some remorse. Father, I will try my best. 1 year later, I will definitely get to the 7th stage of Dou Qi. Xiao Yan said with a slight smile. 1 year for stages? Haha, if it was in the past, there might be the chance. However, now, there is no chance. Although Xiao Yan was comforting his father, Xiao Yan smiled self-deprecatingly in his heart. Knowing Xiao Yan's situation, Xiao Yan could only respond with a sigh. He knew how difficult it was to advance 4 stages in just 1 year. He patted Xiao Yan's head and suddenly smiled. It's not early anymore, go back and sleep. Tomorrow, we will have some important guests. Don't lose your manners. Guests? Who are they? Xiao Yan said with curiosity. You'll know tomorrow. Squinting his eyes at Xiao Yan, Xiao Yan left with large strides. Relax, father. I will try my best. Touching the black ring on his finger, Xiao Yan raised his head and muttered. When Xiao Yan raised his head, the black ring in his hand suddenly flashed weakly. The flash disappeared within the blink of an eye, so not one was able to observe it. Chapter 3 Guest. A young man was meditating on his bed. In front of him, his hands were clasped in a weird yet relaxed manner. His chest peacefully rose and fell with the rhythm of his breath. Everything was just so natural. With every breath he took, a pale white stream of what seemed to be air darted into the young man's nose and mouth, squeezing into his body and reshaping it. As the young man was meditating, a strange yet dim sparkle appeared for a brief moment on the plain black ring that he wore on his finger. Huh! The young man slowly let out his breath and opened his eyes, blinking. A pale white light flashed across his black pupils. That was the Dou Qi that had just been absorbed but not yet completely refined. It took such great effort to get that Dou Qi, but F***ck, it's disappearing again. No, please no. The young man tried desperately to keep the disappearing Dou Qi from slipping away, but to no avail. As the last sliver of Dou Qi left his body, the young man's face changed from being calm to one of anger and despair, and his voice rose with fury. He curled his hands into fists, and was rapidly clenching and unclenching them. Eventually, his visage transited from extreme anger to a forced grin. After all, there was nothing he could do about it. Wearily, he dragged his body off the bed and stretched his numb legs. With only Dou Qi of a third stage, such menial matters were always present. After having done a few exercises in his plain room, an old, wizened voice sounded outside of his door. "Young master, the clan leader has requested your presence in the hall." The young man was the third son of the clan header, Xiao Yan. Above him were two brothers, but they had already left the clan in search of adventure. Only at the end of each year would they come back and meet their family. Overall, however, the two brothers were extremely nice to their little brother, Xiao Yan, even when he fell from being a genius to a piece of trash. "Coming!" Xiao Yan changed his clothes and went out. Outside of his room was an elder in a green robe. "Let's go!" Looking at the young man's fresh face, the elder nodded his head. But when he turned around, his eyes showed a flash of regret. If young master had his former talent, he probably would have been a great doja, such a waste. The elder and the young man crossed through the backyard and finally arrived solemnly at the welcoming hall. After politely knocking, the two softly went in. The hall was quite large, but there were many people already in it. At the head of the hall were Xiao Yan and three emotionless elders. They were the clan elders and had equal importance to the clan leader. On the left, below the four, were other elders from the clan. These elders didn't hold as much power as the clan elders, but nevertheless, they had quite a bit of say and weren't pushovers. Besides these elders were young men that had shown promise and talent. On the other side was three strangers. Looks like they were the people that Xiao Yan foretold last night. The young man's eyes quickly swept through the strangers. Of the three, there was an elder wearing a moon-white outfit. Although the elder was all smiles, his tiny eyes were full of energy, restlessly scanning the room. Xiao Yan's sight dipped lower, stopping at the elder's chest. On his chest was a silver moon, and besides the moon were 7 shiny stars. 7-star de Dou. This guy's a 7-star de Dou? Incredible. Xiao Yao could barely refrain from gasping at the elder. The elder was stronger than his own father. In fact, he was 2 whole stars stronger. Anyone that became a de Dou was at least a power to be reckoned with. With that kind of strength, most places would probably rush for recruitment. To be able to see such a powerful person, it's not surprising that Xiao Yan was shocked. Beside the elder were a young couple. They were also wearing moon-white robes. The male was about 20 years old and had a handsome face, coupled with a strong build. He was definitely the ideal type for any girl. Of course, the most important thing was, on his chest were 5 golden stars. This represented the strength of the young man. 5-star Dou Qi. To be able to become a 5-star Dou Qi at the age of 20 definitely shows the exceptional talent of the young man. With a handsome face and decent strength, this young man not only became the target of stares from young girls in the clan, even Xiao Mei occasionally sent glances to him. But the looks that the girls gave had no effect on the young man. His entire focus was concentrated on the young girl beside him. The young girl's age was similar to Xiao Yan, which made Xiao Yan flinch. Her beauty even rivaled Xiao Mei's. No, she was prettier than Xiao Mei. In the entire clan, probably only Xiao Sun Heir could rival her. No wonder the guys of Xiao clan chased girls outside of the clan. On the intricate ear of the young girl was a green jade earrings. As she moved around, the pieces of jade clinked together, chirping a beautiful melody and adding a hint of royalty to the girl. In addition, on the developing chest of the girl were 3 golden stars. A 3-star Dou Qi, this girl, if she didn't use any special methods, she must be an incredible genius. Xiao Yao's heart fell. She had talent rivaling his former talent. But Xiao Yao forced his eyes away from the cold beauty. No matter what, beneath Xiao Yao's immature appearance was a mature soul. Although the girl was very pretty, he kept himself from acting like a drooling slob. 3. Xiao Yan's actions caused a slight tension within the girl. Although she wasn't the kind that had an entire universe revolving around her, her beauty and appearance wasn't bad. Xiao Yan's random glance over her was a first for her. "Father, 3 elders!" Walking quickly, Xiao Yan courteously greeted the Xiao Zhan and the 3 elders. "Ha ha, Yan heir, you came! Here, come sit." Seeing Xiao Yan arrival, Xiao Zhan stopped talking to his guests and nodded in the direction of Xiao Yan, waving his hand to indicate for Xiao Yan to take a seat. With a slight smile, Xiao Yan ignored the lazy, almost hateful gazes from the 3 clan elders and searched for his seat. But he was surprised at the result. He didn't have a seat. "Ha, my position in the clan is just sinking lower and lower. It was better before, but now, they even embarrass me in front of guests, these old geezers." Xiao Yao ridiculed himself silently. In his mind, he shook his head as if it could block the emotions that welled up within him. Looking at the motionless Xiao Yan, the young clan members let out soft, mocking laughter, showing their happiness at seeing Xiao Yan be made a fool. Finally, Xiao Zhan realized Xiao Yan's predicament. A look of anger flashed across his face before being replaced with a bent eyebrow. "Second elder, you. Oh, really sorry. I can't believe that I forgot about young master. Hee, I'll go get someone to prepare a chair." The yellow-robed elder smiled at the staring Xiao Zhan. He patted his forehead in an act of self-criticism, but the belittling look in his eyes didn't fade. "Brother Xiao Yan, come sit here." The clear voice of a girl rang across the hall. The 3 elders tensed, their gaze shifting to Sun Heir in the corner. Their mouths twitched, but none of them said anything. In the corner, Xiao Sun Heir closed the thick book in her lap and blinked at Xiao Yan. Looking at Xiao Sun Heir's smiling face, Xiao Yan froze for a second. Quickly, he recovered and after touching his nose, he walked towards Sun Heir under the envious gazes of the surrounding clan members, and after what seemed like the longest few seconds, he plopped next to Sun Heir. Xiao Yan whispered, "Thanks, you've rescued me again." Xiao Sun Heir lightly smiled, 2 small dimples appearing on her face. Her slender fingers flipped open the book in front of her. Even though she was extremely young, there was an air of intellectuality around her. After scanning through the page, Sun Heir suddenly complained, "Brother Xiao Yan, you haven't sat beside me, alone, for 3 years now, right?" You're a genius in the clan, isn't it simple for you if you want friends? Looking at the resentful face of Sun Er, Xiao Yan drily laughed. But the thing is, a certain someone snuck into my room every night when he was 4 to 6. And then that certain someone used a clumsy technique, and weak Dou Qi to strengthen my bones and meridians. Every time, the same person would get himself sweating profusely before leaving. Brother Xiao Yan, do you know who he is? Sun Er paused for a moment, and suddenly tilted her head, and smiled towards Xiao Yan. How am I supposed to know? I was so young back then, in fact, I could barely walk, how would I know? Xiao Yan's heart began to beat violently. Forcing open a smile, Xiao Yan guilty turned his gaze to the center of the hall. He. Looking at Xiao Yan's reaction, a slight smile floated on Xiao Sun Er's face. Her sight moved back to the book on her lap, and as if talking to herself, she said, "Even though I know that person did it in goodwill, I'm a girl, right? How can I let someone carelessly touch me? If I ever find out who did it, Xiao Yan's mouth began to twitch violently. Keeping his sight straight, he shut his mouth tight. Chapter 4: Faction of the Misty Clouds. In the main hall, Xiao Zhan and the 3 clan elders were talking excitedly with the strange elder. The guest seemed to have something weighing on his mind, yet every time when it seemed as if he was about to broach the subject, he would swallow back the words and change the topic. Each time he did this, the delicate girl next to him would give the elder a subtle yet firm glance. After listening on to their conversation for a while, Xiao Yan was bored by their conversation and his head was slowly drooping. "Brother Xiao Yan, do you know who they are?" Right when Xiao Yan was about to fall asleep from boredom, Sun Er, who was beside him, opened her ancient book and asked Xiao Yan, "Do you know?" Xiao Yan curiously looked at Sun Er. "Did you see the symbol of a silver sword with the clouds on the cuff of their robes?" Sun Er said with a light smile. "Oh?" Xiao Yan looked towards the cuffs of the 3, and indeed, there he clearly saw the embroidered symbol of a sword sparkling in the clouds. "They are from the faction of Misty Clouds?" Xiao Yan asked in bewilderment. Even though Xiao Yan had never gone out into the real world, he had read from books about this faction. Xiao Yan's clan lived in a city named Wutan City, which was part of the Jiama Empire. Even though this city is listed as being one of the bigger cities within Jiama Empire, it was still dwarfed by the size of the empire, despite having the magic monster's mountain range behind it. Within the city itself, Xiao Yan's clan was the biggest. Besides the Xiao clan, there were 2 other clans that competed with the Xiao clan, but even after 24 years of blood and strife, they were unable to overtake the Xiao clan. If the Xiao clan was the strongest power in Wutan City, then the faction of Misty Clouds would be the strongest power in the entire Jiama Empire. The difference between the Xiao clan and the faction of Misty Clouds was enormous, to the point where Xiao Yan's father Xiao Zhan, who normally kept a strict and harsh face, was extremely respectful in front of these guests. "Why are they here?" Xiao Yan whispered. Sun Er's slim fingers paused. "Maybe it's related to you, brother Xiao Yan." "Me? But I don't have any relationship with them." Hearing Sun Er's response, Xiao Yan paused before shaking his head and whispering back, "Do you know the name of the girl up there?" Sun Er glanced at the girl. "No, do you?" Xian Yan furrowed his brows as he examined the face of the girl Sun Er pointed out. He cannot recall ever having seen her before. "She's Nailin Yanran." A curious expression floated on Sun Er's face. Xiao Yan stiffened. "Nailin Yanran? The granddaughter of Nailin Jie, the Lionheart commander of Jiama Empire? She's my fiancé that was set between our families, before I was born? Grandfather and Nailin Jie were like blood brothers, and at that time, you and Nailin Yanran were born around the same time, so the 2 decided that you guys would get married. But unfortunately, 3 years after you were born, grandfather died in a fight with a clan enemy, and as time passed, Xiao clan's relation with the Nayland family became weaker. Sun Er paused and looked at Xiao Yan, who was absorbed in Sun Er's story. Nayland Jia is not only arrogant, he also puts extreme emphasis on promises. The marriage was decided by him, so even though your name has been quite bad the past few years, he has never once thought of annulling the marriage. That geezer sure is quite obstinate. Xiao Yan smiled. Nayland Jia has the final say in all matters within the family, so even though he really is very fond of his granddaughter, no one in the family has stepped up to oppose the marriage. Sun Er's beautiful eyes lightly glanced at Xiao Yan before continuing. But 5 years ago, Nayland Yanran became a student under the faction leader of Misty Clouds. In these 5 years, Nayland Yanran demonstrated incredible talent. When a person has enough power to change the path of their life, they would try their hardest to change things that they don't like, and unfortunately, she absolutely hates her promised marriage with brother Xiao Yan. Yuri saying that she came to cancel the marriage? Xiao Yan's face darkened. At this moment he was furious, not because Nayland Yanran did not want him as her husband, but rather because Nayland Yanran is trying to cancel the marriage with the entire clan present. If that happens, then his father would lose much of his dignity and respect within the clan. Xiao Yan slowly breathed in, the cold air calming his raging thoughts. Within his sleeve, Xiao Yan curled his fist, thinking, if I was a Dou Qi, who would dare to trample over my dignity? It was true, if Xiao Yan was a Dou Qi, then, even if Nayland Yanran had the backing of the faction of Misty Clouds, she would not be able to do such a thing. A 15-year-old Dou Qi, there were only a few that had such high accomplishments in the entire history of Dou Qi mainland. And the few people that were at that level when they were that young are now some of the most influential people in the entire Dou Qi world. A small fragile hand cleverly evaded Xiao Yan's sleeves and held on to Xiao Yan's hands. Sun Er softly said, Brother Xiao Yan, if she really cancels the marriage, then that's her own loss. I believe that in a couple of years, she will be regretting her decisions today. Regret? Xiao Yan sneered. With my current abilities, I don't have that kind of luxury. Xiao Yan paused before changing the tone of his voice. Wait, Sun Er. How are you so familiar with them? The things that you've just said, my father might not even know some of them. How do you know all these? Sun Er stiffened but did not say anything. Looking at Shui Er's avoidance on the subject, Xiao Yan could only helplessly smile. Even though Sun Er was also part of the Xiao family, she and Xiao Yan didn't have any relation by blood. In addition, Xiao Yan had never seen Sun Er's parents, and every time he asked his father about them, Xiao Zhan would shake his head and not speak. Soon, Sun Er's parents became a taboo subject, something that they seemed to fear speaking about. For Xiao Yan, Sun Er's identity was always veiled in mystery. No matter how hard or how cleverly he tried, Sun Er would always stay silent. Ugh, whatever, if you don't want to say it then don't. Shaking his head, Xiao Yan's face suddenly darkened again. The guest elder, under the repeated signals from Nayland Yanran, finally stood up. Hey, using the faction of Misty Clouds to pressure father? This Nayland Yanran certainly is using some shameless tactics. Fury began to build within Xiao Yan's heart. Chapter 5, Qi Gathering Powder. Ahem. The white-robed elder cleared his throat and stood up. Putting his hands together, he smiled. Clan leader Xiao Zhan. The reason we came here for today is because we would like your help for something. Of course, Gu Yi, if you have any problems just let me know. If I can help you solve it, then I definitely wouldn't dare say no. To the visiting elder, Xiao Zhan did not refuse, but since he did not know what the request was, he did not make any promises either. Leader Xiao, do you know her? Dou Qi smiled lightly and pointed to the girl next to him. I'm sorry, this girl is. Xiao Yan looked over the girl and awkwardly shook his head. When Nalin Yanran became Yunjun's student, she was only 8. After studying in the faction of Misty Clouds for 5 years, she had changed quite a lot. Before she was only a child, but now she is a blooming teenager. Huh! Her name is Nalin Yanran. Uncle Xiao, I haven't come to pay my respect in a long time. It's my fault that you don't recognize me, Nalin Yanran sweetly said. Hee Yanran, I heard that you've become a student under Yunjun. At the time, I thought that it was just a baseless rumor, but now I realize that it's actually true. What incredible talent you must have, Xiao Yan complimented. It was just good luck. Smiling lightly, Nalin Yanran began to feel uncomfortable and lightly tugged Dou Qi's robe with her hand under the table. Leader Xiao, the request that I have relates to Yanran. In addition, this was assigned by our faction leader. Dou Qi kept his smile, but when he mentioned the faction leader, he subconsciously lessened his smile, and his face grew serious. Like Dou Qi, Xiao Yan stopped smiling. The faction leader of the faction of Misty Clouds was one of the most important people in the entire Jianma Empire. Xiao Yan, who was a small clan leader, wouldn't dare to provoke her. But with her power, what would she need Xiao clan to help with? Dou Qi did say that it was related to Yanran, is it that? A wandering thought crossed Xiao Yan's mind, causing the edge of his mouth to twitch slightly and his firm hand to start trembling. Thankfully his hands were covered by his long sleeves. Taking care to push down the thought, Xiao Yan shakily asked, Mr. Dou Qi, please do tell me what is the faction's request? Dou Qi hesitated, but he thought about how much the faction leader adored Yanran, and thus, he clenched his teeth. Leader Xiao, you know how strict the rules are in the faction. In addition, faction leader views Yanran very highly. In fact, faction leader is expecting Yanran to be the next faction leader. However, due to a special rule, future faction leaders cannot have a relation with another male before they become the official faction leader. Taking a breath, Dou Qi continued. When our faction leader asked Yanran about it, she realized that Yanran and the Xiao clan had a marriage proposal. Therefore, faction leader asked for leader Xiao to cancel this marriage. Ka! The jade cup in Xiao Yan's hands turned into a fine mist in an instant. In the main hall, everyone was silent. The 3 clan elders were shocked by Dou Qi's words, but soon afterwards, the elders glanced at Xiao Yan with plain glee and ridicule. How will you respond to this? The 3 elders thought sinisterly. A couple of the younger kids didn't know about the set marriage between Xiao Yan and Nalin Yanran, but after asking their parents about it, their faces brightened. Their glances towards Xiao Yan were full of ridicule and distaste. Looking at Xiao Yan's dark face, Nalin Yanran lowered her head and squeezed her fingers together. Leader Xiao, I know that this request is a little over the top, but because faction leader requested it, please cancel the marriage. Helplessly letting out a breath, Dou Qi lightly whispered to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's hands curled into fists. A faint green Dou Qi slowly creeped over his body, and finally, it formed an illusory lion's head in front of Xiao Yan's face. Xiao Clan's secret Qi method, Furious Lion's Rage. Level, Middle Xian. Looking at Xiao Yan's reaction, Dou Qi's face became serious. He moved to place Yanran behind him, and within his eagle claw-like hands a green Dou Qi gathered. The Dou Qi released small but sharp illusory swords. Faction of Misty Clouds Qi method, Greenwood Sword. Level, Low Xian. With the release of Dou Qi, the weaker youngsters within the main hall became pale and felt their chests tighten. When Xiao Yan's breathing became more intense, the 3 elders yelled out. Their voices were like lightning that swept through the hall. Xiao Yan, stop! Don't forget, you re the clan leader of Xiao clan. Xiao Yan stiffened and the Dou Qi on his body disappeared slowly. Xiao Yan fell back into his chair and emotionlessly watched the lowered head of Yanran. Finally, he said as a raspy tone, Nalan, you have some guts. With such a daughter, I'm really envious of Nalan Su. Nalan Yanran twitched. Uncle Xiao. No! Call me clan leader Xiao from now on. I don't deserve to be called uncle. You read the future faction leader of the faction of Misty Clouds. In the future you'll probably one of the most important people in Dou Qi mainland. My Xiao Yan only has modest talent, he doesn't deserve you. Thank you clan leader Xiao. Hearing Xiao Zhan's words, Guye's face brightened. Apologizing, he says. Clan leader Xiao, faction leader understands that today's request is quite disrespectful. Therefore, she asked me to bring something. Please accept it as an apology from our faction leader. Guyi touched a ring on his hand and suddenly a completely pan-green jade box appeared in his hand. Carefully opening the box, a fragrance swept through the entire main hall. Anyone who smelled it felt relaxed. The three elders' curiosity got the better of them and they poked their head to see the contents of the box. Qi gathering powder? Chapter 6 Alchemists. Within the jade box, a green pill, about the size of a dragon's eye, laid quietly. The refreshing scent that had spread throughout the entire hall was emanating from the pill. In Dou Qi mainland, to become a doge, one needs to be able to compress the qi within one's own body to a qi cyclone. But the process of compressing qi to become a qi cyclone has an extremely high failure rate. After failing, one's 9 duan qi would fall back to 8 duan. Some unlucky people need to compress their qi 10 or more times before they are successful in doing so. But by wasting so much time on the compression of qi, one would lose the best time to practice qi and thus destroy their future. Qi gathering power, its use was to allow someone with 9 duan qi to have a 100% success rate when trying to compress one's qi. This effect makes many people red-eyed. After all, anyone that's not a doge is treated extremely badly. But qi gathering power isn't something made by nature, rather it was made by someone, alchemist. Qi gathering power, its use was to allow someone with 9 duan qi to have a 100% success rate when trying to compress one's qi. This effect makes many people red-eyed. After all, anyone that's not a doge is treated extremely badly. But qi gathering power isn't something made by nature, rather it was made by someone, alchemist. In Dou Qi mainland, the sole profession that's more desirable than a doge are alchemists. Like the name suggests, alchemists are able to create special pills that raise one's strengths. Every free agent alchemist is sought after by many forces. The reason as to why alchemists have such a high position is because of how rare alchemists are and how strict the requirements to become an alchemist are. First of all, one must be of the fire attribute. And then, within the fire attribute, one must have a tiny sliver of the wood attribute to act as a catalysis in pill refining. In the Dou Qi mainland, a person's attribute is determined by their soul. A soul since birth will only have one soul attribute and reject any other attribute. So it's impossible for a person to have two attributes. Of course, nothing is impossible. Within 1,000,000 people, there will always be someone who has a mutated soul. Within these people that have mutated souls, some have the potential to become alchemists. However, a person that has the fire and wood attributes is not enough to become an alchemist. That's because one must also have a strong soul perception or soul molding. In the refinement of pills, the three most important requirements are the material, the flame, and one's soul perception. The material. There would have to be natural treasures. After all, even the best alchemists can't create a god-tier pill from trash material. Therefore, good base materials are very important for good pills. The flame, or the fire that's required when refining pills. The fire used in refining pills can't be normal flames, but rather, they must be Dou Qi flames created Dou Qi with a fire attribute. Of course, there are some extremely strong mutated flames in nature. Some strong alchemists would take these flames and use them to refine pills instead of their own Dou Qi flame. Not only do these mutated flames boost the success rate of the refinement, they also increase the effectiveness of the pills. Because refining pills is a gruesome task, extended periods of refinement requires a lot of Dou Qi, and because of that, every brilliant alchemist is also a strong fire-type doja. The final requirement is soul perception. When refining a pill, the intensity of the flame needs to be controlled with ridiculous precision. If the flame is slightly too hot, the pill within the furnace would be burned to ashes, wasting the time and effort of the alchemist. Therefore, controlling the intensity of the flame is a prerequisite to becoming an alchemist. But in order to have a control over the flames, one must have an incredible soul perception. Without soul perception, even if one meets or even exceeds the first two requirements, it would be pointless to try to refine pills. Under these strict conditions, the ones who have the qualifications to become an alchemist are few and rare. Because there aren't that many alchemists, the magical pills that they refine are also few and sparse. Since rare things are valuable and pills can definitely be defined as rare, alchemists all have an honorable, to an exaggerated extent, position. Within the main hall, with the gasps of the three elders, the younger generation all stare at the jade box in Guye's hands. Next to her father, Xiao Mei licks her red lips with her soft tongue and stares at the box, without blinking. Hee, this was refined by our honorable elder Dou Qi. I think that everyone here has heard of his name, right? Looking at the embarrassing appearance of the three elders, Guyi started becoming arrogant. This pill was refined by the Pill King Dou Qi? Hearing Guye's words, the three elders once again embarrassed themselves. Pill King Dou Qi, an extremely influential alchemist within the Jiangma Empire. His alchemy is mysterious and unpredictable, causing countless different forces to try to fawn upon him. Not only does Dou Qi have extraordinary talent in alchemy, his own strength is at the level of a Dou Wang, and he's one of the top 10 doges in Jiangma Empire. Refined by his hands, the qi-gathering powder's value is probably exponentially higher than other normal qi-gathering power. The three elders smile at the qi-gathering powder within the jade box. If the Xiao clan gets this qi-gathering powder, then the Xiao clan can probably develop another young doge. Right when the three elders were thinking about how to get the pill for their own grandsons, a young voice filled with fury resonates within the main hall. Mr. Guyi, it would be better if you kept the pill. Your request, we might not accept it. The main hall fell silent, and everyone's gaze turns upon the delicate face of Xiao Yan in the corner. Xiao Yan, you don't have the right to say anything right now. Be quiet! One of the elders' face became dark as he yells at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yao, be quiet. I know that you're not happy about this, but we'll decide what will happen. Another quite old elder said to Xiao Yan. Three elders, if your sons or grandsons had their marriage released today, would you still be saying that? Xiao Yao slowly stands up. The edge of his mouth was curved upwards in ridicule. Since it was apparent that the three elders treated him with disdain, why should he be so respectful to them? You! Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the three elders couldn't find a way to argue against his words. The grumpy third elder even started materializing his Dou Qi in anger. Three elders, Xiao Yao Ji isn't wrong. He's the victim of this, so you guys shouldn't decide for him. A clear girl's voice rang across the main hall. Hearing the girl's voice, the three elders' arrogance fell, and after exchanging worried glances, they all nodded and sat back down. Looking at the three elders backing off, Xiao Yao turns his head back and deeply gazes at the smiling Xiao Sun heir. Who are you? To be able to make the three elder fear you. Pressing down his confusion, Xiao Yao quickly walks up and respectfully bows to his father, Xiao Zhan. Afterwards he turns around to face Neilin Yanran. Slowly letting a breath of air, he asks, Lady Neilin, I would like to ask a question. Your visit here today, to release the marriage, did Grandfather Neilin give his consent? Before, when Xiao Yan came out from his corner, Neilin Yanran already felt uncomfortable with him. Now hearing his question, her brow scrunches up. This guy, at first I thought he was pretty nice, but he's actually extremely shameless. Does he not know the difference between the two of us? Criticizing Xiao Yan in her mind, Neilin Yanran never considered how releasing the marriage would put Xiao Yan and his father into an awkward and infuriating situation. Standing up and staring at the should-be husband of hers, Neilin Yanran says, Grandfather didn't give his consent. But this is my own problem and not related to him. Since Grandfather hasn't said anything, then I hope that you will forgive my father for not accepting your request. Our marriage was set by our two grandfathers, and since none of them have said to release the marriage, then this marriage will go on. Or else, the people that are trying to release the marriage would be disrespecting their ancestors. I think that within our clan, there aren't any people that would do such a dishonorable thing. Xiao Yan tilts his head and stares straight at the three elders. Using the dishonorable title, Xiao Yan forced the elders to be silent. In the strict clan, doing something as blasphemous as disrespecting one's ancestors would be enough for them to lose their spot as an elder of the clan. You! After being rebuffed by Xiao Yan, Neilin Yanran couldn't find any argument to retort Xiao Yan's claim. Her face became ashen, and heavily stomping her feet, her princessy nature became apparent. Looking at the young man with disgust, she annoyingly says, Under what conditions will you release the marriage? Were the reparations too little? All right, I can ask my teacher to give you another 3 Qi gathering powder. In addition, if you want to, I can let you join faction of Misty Clouds and learn profound Dou Qi training methods. Is that enough? Hearing the attractive conditions from Neilin Yanran, the 3 elders' breathing started to become heavy. Within the main hall, the younger generation swallowed the saliva. Joining faction of Misty Clouds? God, that's the dream of countless people. After saying all these conditions, Neilin Yanran raised her snow-white chin, like a princess addressing her servants. She waited for Xiao Yan's response, and knew that these conditions were enough to make any young man crazy. That's all for this time. If you want to know what's to follow, listen to the next video.